again, everybody. I want to mention just how brave you are to come back and be willing to be open-minded to the idea of emptiness. The great news is we have with us at Our Metaverse one of our treasured board members and my very first teacher, Mr. Guru Karuna Cayton. I love him. He's a very amazing person. And he's very generous to us. He comes to us without asking for anything in return. And so I'm honored that he's willing to do that for us. I want to share my screen for 2 seconds before we go. I want to promote the two books that he's spent a lot of time writing to try to share these ideas with us. His first book is called The Misleading Mind. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's got a lot of stories in it that apply the learnings to a certain situation. And you go, oh, great. And his second book that just came out is 6 Myths That We Live By and How to Overcome Them. Every day we repeat these same things that just aren't true, and then we live our life based on that. And this takes a good critical angle look at why those are myths, and we could have a little bit easier time if we didn't see things through the eyes of myths. So thank you for joining us. I'm Denise Smith of Our Metaverse, a community coming together to grow our compassion, to be able to be with each other in every moment and to share those moments together. And I appreciate that you're part of this one.
Okay, I think the people who were last week who didn't come today all got scared away by the topic, maybe.
Oh, no, I'm back.
Yeah.
Caroline's into it. I love it. I'm like, yes, we got her.
Has anyone ever looked into this topic before? Who's here? No, good. Good. Usually as I was explaining to Denise, there's certain kinds of commitments that we take that, well, many kinds of commitments. One of them is that we're not really permitted to teach this particular teaching for people who are not ready. And the reason is not because it's some secret thing. That's not the point. The reason is because it's something that is very delicate, that if one develops a wrong view or incorrect understanding of it, then it can actually be kind of well, it can be a big obstacle for one's spiritual development. So that's why, when I checked with Denise before, I was asking her what the audience was like and that sort of thing. So it's good to have a I don't want to say, well, skeptical mind. It's good to have doubt. I think I mentioned it last week. It's good to have doubt, but we're talking about doubt with an open mind, as a doubt that's leaning towards disbelief or closed-mindedness. And that's the main thing that we have to try to engender with this topic. Pretty much any topic, I guess you would say. And so with this in particular, uh, it has a very unique place because it is uniquely Buddhist. And Buddhist, by I mean, is uniquely uh, explained or it's uniquely presented by the Buddha himself for the purpose of attaining awakening. So when we're talking about in general, so many people are interested in Buddhism and that sort of thing. But what we're really looking at here is a lot of people, well, let me put it differently. People have different intentions of why they're getting interested in Buddhist thought and Buddhist practice. And it can be just, it can be as good, it can be as simple as wanting to be calmer and more mindful and more balanced and those kinds of things. For those, what we call temporal, okay, to give the word is a temporal achievements. They're temporal because anything that does not, this is a traditional explanation. Traditionally, any spiritual endeavor or practice that is not with the intention to at least attain a higher rebirth. Okay, so now we're going into those kinds of thoughts, then they're not considered necessarily, how to say this? Uh, you don't need this topic for that, for example. And so to even to attain higher rebirth, you don't need this particular topic. So why we say that is because everything else then is considered sort of a temporal pursuit or worldly pursuit. It's a lot like the difference between offering charity so that your reputation stays good, or you just want to help people to have some food, that kind of thing. That's not considered necessarily a spiritual or an awakening practice. What defines something, okay, so what defines something as a spiritual practice in this context, in the Buddhist context, is something that does not is it comes down to intention. So really, when we start practicing and we study hard and we practice hard, all you really need to do is have the right intention. Okay? And so the right intention, so the wrong intentions, things like giving charity or giving food or to homeless people, whatever you want to call it, if it's for one of these gains that are just for this life, now that seems very religious, but when we talk about this life, we mean a temporal gain, like you want to feel better because you gave something to the homeless guy, or you want to meditate because you're really out of balance today, or you've noticed you're out of balance, you want to practice mindfulness, you need a calmer mind, a balanced mind. Though you think about the intention. So now, from now on, anything, if you engage in spiritual practice, and particularly in Buddhist practice, you have to check your intention first. Okay? Um, if you say, well, I really like coming to these talks. I think you have a meditation group too, right, Denise?
Mhm.
So why are people there? So the so we tend not to check our intentions very well. When we become so I remember Lama Zopa was asked once, what he thought of mindfulness, which is originated in the Buddhist tradition, what he thought of mindfulness, and then his reply was mindfulness of what? You can use the example of someone training to be a sniper. You know, to be a sniper, my little understanding is you need to develop an intense quality of focus. You need to be mindful of, what's around the person and what's around you. You need to be mindful of your state of mind. Do you have anxiety and tension? Are you relaxed? All those things. So that's mindfulness. But you see, why it's not defined as a spiritual practice is because practices or actions are never defined as spiritual or not. Okay? That's a big one for us. So what defines a spiritual practice is the intention. Okay. So typically when we start a class, we set our intention. And the intention for it to be wholesome or to say to be spiritual, one one has to think, well, at the very least, um, anything that's with the intention of compassion, of course, is virtuous, it's spiritual. But then we have to define what compassion means too. Okay, we're not going to do that. Well, I can do that, but at the moment, if your intention, I'm talking about, sorry, the traditional way of teaching about intention is that I'm going to do this, I'm going to give to this homeless person, I'm going to do this mindfulness practice with the intention of developing my mind so that I become an awakened being. So some people might feel, well, this life I can't attain awakening. So at the very least, I need to take a rebirth where I will be in the best conditions to then carry on my spiritual practice. That's where that comes from. So if it's directed to this life, okay, again, traditional language, if it's directed to the happiness or the fulfillment of this life, it may be a virtuous action. So we got to make that clear. They can be virtuous, which is good. It can be wholesome, which is good. But in the context of whether it's a spiritual practice or not, it depends on your motivation. And if it's the motivation to get something in this life solely, then we would not call it a spiritual practice. And we also certainly would not see it as any way as a direct means to attaining any kind of awakening. Of course, it creates conditions that are conducive. And we have to have a conducive lifestyle. If we're stuck in poverty, then this is a kind of an Eastern understanding. If you're stuck in poverty, you can't get, then what they'll do is they'll do they'll do rituals, and they'll practice generosity and those kinds of things that might lift them out of poverty. It might not also, by the way. But the cause, everything has a cause and everything has a result. The result of abundance or resources is generosity, funny enough. It's not good business practices, Denise. I'm picking on her.
It's a
It's
I love
not
that though. You told me that a long time ago, and I
it's not your
love that.
brochures. It's not your brochures. You're not social media postings. It's not because many, many people do all those exact same things. So Denise does the same thing that the other 10 people do. And the other 10 people don't get many sales. They're not, say the market's stuck. It's in a downturn. And Denise is meanwhile is selling house after house. Why? So people look at it and go, oh, well, it's where she lives. Or it's not, those are conditions. Okay. Those are conditions. This is very important. In reality, what we're talking about is there are conditions and there are causes. Conditions and causes are not the same thing because everyone can create the same conditions. So everyone follows Denise's blueprint for a successful, real estate business, and three of them do well and seven don't. Why? So we'll start looking at conditions, right? We'll look at the condition. Well, he's kind of rude when he talks to his clients, or the location is bad, or he gets on the listings too late, or all those kinds of things. That's where we go, isn't it? That's where we go, right? In terms of a spiritual perspective, yeah, in terms of a spiritual perspective, one then begins to consider causes because the cause of Denise's abundance is not her good marketing. In fact, if she had all the causes, she could sit on her in her lazy boy and just the sales would come in. Okay, you got to do something, but that's how it works. And it's like we see that with people. Some people have an easier time, others don't. Okay. Um, so that's intention. So intention with this topic, with emptiness, yes, it is designated towards a spiritual pursuit, and it won't work if it's not. Now, also, I often speak about the three, what do we call it? Three conditions for experience. And the first is what tradition is called hearing. What that means is listening, getting the content. Could be reading, could be teachings you go to, it could be podcasts, doesn't matter. It's getting the content. You can't really attain an experience, an, a, 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 a spiritual transformation without the right content. The second phase is what's referred to as contemplate, which means reflecting on what you're reading. So it's not just reading, it's actually reflecting on it, mulling it over, digesting it, debating with it, that with people around it, discussing. That's contemplation. It could also be done on your own, alone, sitting quietly, thinking about the ideas, reflecting on them as well. Then the third is meditation. In meditation, we'll just cut to the chase and we'll say experience, okay? An inner experience. So everything from emptiness to karma to this precious human rebirth, death and dying, all these topics that are promoted and taught through the Buddhist tradition, other traditions, is meant to be experienced. Without the experience, as Lama used to say, without the taste, there's no change. There's really not much change. So that's where meditation comes in. Okay, we can talk about it at some point, meditation, whenever you want. But what we're talking about, meditation, if it's properly done, is where you have the idea, like let's say emptiness, and you have a direct experience of emptiness. Or we're talking about this precious life. You have a direct experience of the precious life. So it's not about reading about it. That's not the experience of it. In fact, we all can read it till our whole lives and not change much. Okay. So then we contemplate about, well, let's say death and dying, death. We can contemplate death, but there is the teachings on death or impermanence or karma or all these things, they're just signposts. They're not the thing. Okay, it's very important. You only get to the thing when you practice, have a direct experience. Now, direct experience of death, I don't mean by dying. That's not what's meant, though that could say it's a direct experience. But in fact, even dying, it doesn't mean you have direct experience because you might be completely distracted from the experience itself. So the experience, what the teachings on death and dying, for example, are not really about scaring one. It's about, you think about the content that, we have outlines for everything. And so there's an outline about death and dying. And then you think about it, and then you actually will have a direct experience of what is meant by death, and that direct experience that happens in meditation is not like what you read, and it's not like what you contemplate, and it's not like what it is when you die. There's something else there. There's this kind of essential quality to all of these ideas. Every idea, as it might be exaggeration, but every idea that Buddha taught is to be experienced, is an experiential. And all the words that you're reading are not it. That's what's frustrating. All the words, they're not it. It's like Krishnamurti used to say, the sign is not the destination. Okay? It's when you have a direct experience. It's like talking about motherhood versus giving birth and raising a child. It's just you can't, I mean, you can't, and you can't put it in words, actually, can you? Or love. When you just feel this overwhelming sense of love for someone, right? Can you put it in words? I mean, there's been millions of songs and poems written about love, right? Why? Because they're trying to tell you what the experience is, and it never actually captures it, does it? It's still language, okay? Language is not an experience. I mean, it's not that experience. And people can
Can
explain
I
it to you.
interrupt right here?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm not talking about
This
emptiness at all
is
yet, have I?
no, this is what, and maybe this is going to be another tangent, but I was listening to some things on AI, and I
Uh-huh.
know that AI is based on large language models and what
Right.
could happen on language that would come next.
Yeah.
And AI can give us input on what words might be appropriate, what story
Mhm.
might be appropriate, something like this. But AI cannot experience.
Cannot. It's not sentient.
It cannot experience. It can put words, it can project, it could create an algorithm, it could do a probability, but it cannot experience. That's the difference with it. That if we get good, this is my opinion, if we get good at experiencing, which means meditating, which means saying, I have these experiences today from causes and conditions I've created. What if I added this other cause and condition through meditation? Oh my God, I got another experience. That is our advantage over AI.
Without experience, there's no transformation. There's no transformation without experience, and good or bad, right? Trauma. Trauma changes people. Okay, it's an experience. Just like falling in love. It's an experience. You can't tell if someone tells. It's like Lamy actually used the example of chocolate. You can describe the taste of chocolate for a million years, and no one will know it's not the experience of chocolate, is it? If you try to describe a taste to somebody, it's impossible, isn't it? It's bitter. Well, the person's bitter. Okay. I had something the other day that was bitter. I guess that's what he means, but it might not mean that. Right? That experience may be different.
And
Anyway,
bringing trauma back into this, I've been doing a lot of work on trauma lately. They say trauma is not what happened to you.
It's not. It's
It
well,
was your experience of it inside of you that made it be a
it's the
traumatic
story.
thing or not.
It's the storying of it. It's the narrative
Mhm.
you have around the experience. That's why I've told the story many times. I won't tell you about the Tibetan refugees who were tortured in China, in Tibet.
Mhm.
And they don't have, so many didn't have PTSD. Why? When they were experiencing the torture, they, it wasn't just the experience, they felt pain. It was the meaning they made around the pain, around the torture, around their torturer, and around themselves. When you do that, that's why it's so frustrating as a psychologist that people will say, "Oh, okay, yeah, domestic, okay, no, say sexual abuse, yeah. So you're going to have this. It's
Mhm.
it's very dangerous. The
Mhm.
the non-dangerous part of that is yes, people tend in our culture that when they have an experience of sexual abuse, they story it in a similar way that someone else who's had that experience. So that's why there is shared and kind of general symptoms and things like that. Of course, you know, people in an airplane that's going through turbulence, many people have the same experience of that turbulence. Now, many people don't, on that plane and they get off and they don't, they're not afraid of flying again because the way they storied their experience was different. So all of Buddhist thought, I would say, I'll make a grand generalization, is about storing our experience in a positive way. By positive, I mean in a transformative way. It contributes to a transformation of that human being into a better human being, and eventually to an awakened being, which is the supreme better human being. So, yeah. And the teachings on emptiness validate that to the extreme. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Nate, so did people have anything they brought from last week? I'm going on and on again.
In a positive way.
Anyone have anything that they carried over from last week?
I feel like I like wrote down a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess something that just came into my mind when you were saying like we have not experienced emptiness. So I guess like the question would be, what are the first steps to experiencing emptiness?
What we're doing now, of course. Um, so yeah, Nathan, this and for everybody, this is I was saying in the beginning why this is a sort of a delicate topic is because for you to have a correct experience, I have to explain the concepts properly. I can't have control if you understand them properly, right? But I have to do my best to guarantee as much as I can that when we finish talking, you have the right information, right? Because if you don't, there are many pitfalls with this topic and meditating on it. For many, I mean, it's spoken abundantly of even great meditators who meditated on emptiness incorrectly, and it has pretty much detrimental effects or results. That's why I'm going so slow with the topic, you know, and I'm very careful. Now, in a technical way, or a technical answer, Nathan, um, the way to progress is to study this topic very thoroughly, to be guided with it too, so that you might be meditating, but you have to make sure that you're being guided. It doesn't have to be necessarily live, but you're listening to the right teachings on it, and and if you're actually meditating on this topic, you should continue. You have to continue listening and studying the topic because many questions will come up. Now, in particular, in a very specific way, the way the one begins to uh, meditate on the topic is I say, is you have to know what it is that, what is it's, sorry, you have to know, first of all, what we mean by empty, right? And what, should I bring up the slides maybe at this point? Oops. Oh, I need to get the host, Denise.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Can I give an example that was interesting for me, just for these guys to think about a little bit, Krona?
Mm-hmm. If it's correct.
Somebody was telling me that they were trying to understand emptiness and they could never get it
Mhm.
until their doctor, they had been getting a lot of treatments for cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And they went to their doctor, and that day the doctor said, I can't find any more cancer in your body at all. It's not there. It's just, it's not here anymore. And at that point, that person was empty of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And that became an experience that was blissful, to be
Mm-hmm.
empty of something, to not have something filling that container.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that that was a really, there are a million different ways that you can have a perspective on understanding emptiness. But that one I thought brought it home to a more general understanding of when something isn't here, how can it cause bliss?
Mm. So the thing that isn't here, so this is again how to begin to meditate and think about it. So the thing that isn't here, it's very important to understand because it's not like an empty room, even not like empty of cancer. There can be similarities. What we're talking about here is it's empty of existing the way it appears.
Mhm.
Okay? Empty of existing the way it appears. So to start, Nathan, you have to know, well, how do things appear, right? This is why it's a delicate topic. So we have to study, not study, but meditate, contemplate, study about what it is that the Buddhist said that isn't here. Okay? What is it that is appearing that isn't there? What is appearing? This is the technical term, and I'll unwrap it for you. Okay, so every object that appears to us, and the two primary objects are one's self or entity, identity. Okay, so that's, Nathan, Denise, and, Rachel and Carolyn and, Dominique, Karuna. That is empty of inherent existence. I'll get into that in a minute. I want you to have the right language first. And then all phenomena, so that means everything else, all the objects of our perception of the world, right, of the universe, those are all objects. Those also do not exist inherently. Okay, we'll get into this. That's what you have to know. And emptiness is referred to as a technical term. Emptiness is referred to as a non-affirming negative. So Denise, that's why you got to be a little careful about the description because the empty of cancer can sound like an affirming negative, not a non-affirming negative. What
Mhm.
non-affirming, an affirming negative is something like, and I don't want to again get too technical, that person's not a man. That's an affirming negative because that
Right,
implies that person is a woman.
right.
Okay? That's not emptiness.
So he's
Okay?
not a man.
In fact, and I say this sort of guardedly, in fact, you never really, um, okay, give me a little license here. You never really perceive emptiness because it's a non-affirming negative. There's nothing there. How can you see something that's not there? But what you do see is the absence of inherent existence. Okay, you do perceive the absence of inherent existence. So that means that, oh, sorry. Okay, so, oh, what happened? Okay, so let's go back. Let's just unpack inherent existence a little more. So when we look at anything and ourself, so when I mean by ourself, when we say, I'm a psychologist, okay, I'm a mother, I'm a real estate agent, you know, um, what's Carrie's title? assistant harbor master, something or other?
Deputy harbor master.
Huh?
Deputy harbor master.
Deputy harbor master. Okay, that's when we say those things, and like right now. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, everyone, just for a moment, just close your eyes for a moment and say, just think to yourself, I'm here, I'm sitting here. Okay, you feel you're sitting there, you're not sitting where I am, are you? You have a sense of I, a sense of self. Your sense of self is not Carrie's sense of self. Carrie's sitting on driving wherever he is. He's got his sense of self. If I say, Carrie, what are you doing? He says, I'm driving. That I is what we're talking about. Okay? And that I never, ever, ever escapes us or never, ever is not appearing. Even in a coma, there's still an I. Okay? It's just very, very unconscious, but it's very subtle. So that I is the one we're talking about. It is appearing to you and me as existing inherently. And I'll get into that some more in a minute. But I want you to get the idea inherently. Okay. It's appearing inherently like a solid, standalone entity. Okay. Even when we say I'm feeling depressed, it's the same I as that's driving the car. It's the same concept of I. It's appearing as solid, as a standalone entity. Okay, how else? So let's talk about that more. That's inherent. That's what again unpacking inherent existence. What does it mean? That's what it means. Now, get more subtle than that. Um, I didn't. You got to. We're all over the place. Okay. Remember this? We did that, didn't we? No. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking for. I think this is where we were the other day. Okay. So we'll go back a little bit more.
What I'm seeing right now is what is a living being, Karuna?
Oh, it's stuck.
Stuck.
No, that's not what I'm seeing.
If you go on your left-hand side and scroll up those ones, maybe you'll get it.
Well, no, it's showing up. I've never had that happen. I'm not sure what that is. Okay. What's there now?
Same.
Oh, let me stop sharing then for a moment.
There we go. Hello, everybody.
What's there now?
Denise.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Bunch of interdependent objects and things.
Yeah. I've never had that happen. I'm not sure what that was. Okay, hang on. Okay. Why isn't my share screen? Oh, where is Denise again?
Share. Multiple participants can share.
This is weird.
On the bottom of your Zoom, is there a green share button?
No, I lost the share. That's why it happened. I lost being host. Oh, here we're just back again. Okay. Okay. What's there now?
What is a living being?
What? Let's try it again.
Maybe close out your PowerPoint and reopen it while we watch Dominique play with her kitty. Hey, sweetie. You want to meet Caroline's kitties?
Oh, here it is.
Mine's sleeping.
Oh,
What do you see now?
reality.
Reality.
Hey.
Just like that, we see reality, you guys.
Yay.
Want to see Dominique's kitty?
Okay. I think I had the wrong slide up the whole time then. Okay. So the reality is that the way something appears is the way it exists.
Okay.
So when we say, I'm tired, I'm driving, I'm listening, I'm depressed, I'm a mother, I'm a father, okay? that I that we believe, this is the essence of it, is that I is false. Okay, it's a myth. And but we have forever believed that it's true, right? Right? That's the difference. It's false or it's true. So we have been saying from countless lifetimes, it's true. That's who I am. That's our belief. That's our perception. And in reality, that is untrue. Nathan asked last week, well, something to the effect of, why does this matter? Right? Well, the reason it matters is every living being wants to be happy. If you have a false sense of who the person is to be happy, how can you be happy? It's like it's like drinking salt water, to quench your thirst. It doesn't do it, but we keep doing it over and over for countless lifetimes. So that I that we're trying to satisfy, that I, all it wants is to be is happy, right? That I that we're working tirelessly to be happy because every instant is spent satisfying that I by either avoiding discomfort or seizing onto comfort. That's all we do in our whole lives. That's the meaning of our reality. That's the meaning of life. Sadly, no one goes, "Oh, I want to be unhappy." Even people who commit suicide, commit suicide because they want to be happy. People, people who cut, people who do, become drug addicts, whatever. It's all because they want to be happy. It's just a false sense, it's really a distorted sense of happiness. But the intention is I want to be happy, or I want to be free of the pain, in the case of suicide, for example. But that being free of the pain is because you want to be free of the pain so that you feel happy, right? I mean, I'm using happy in a very, sort of general sense. We could go into deeper meanings of happy. So does that I, Nathan, does that I that we're constantly trying to satisfy, does that I exist the way you think it does?
The way I think it does,
Mm-hmm.
no, it does not.
Yeah.
Just the way that I think it does.
Right. Okay. So once we begin that sort of deconstruction, then you're going to think, well, does it not exist at all? And I'll
Does
tell
it
you,
exist for what it isn't? Like,
excuse me,
or
excuse me.
is it existing as everything else that I'm not saying it exists as?
Does it exist as everything else? Say it again.
Like say if I say I exist, right? But say I get rid of that existence, um, like I have the potential to exist as anything. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, there's some rules around existing though too. So no, you can't be anything. Um, but you can be a lot of things, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can't be me. You can't be me, for example. And you can't be a rock technically either.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason is because there is things do exist. That's really important. So I'm going to go way down. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit, you guys, because I had so much to talk about. There it went off, didn't it?
You did. Inherent existence, middle way.
Yeah, middle way. So, I mean, this is a topic that we can't cover in two talks. So we're just trying to get a sort of a Reader's Digest version at best. So in the teachings on emptiness, or in the perception, or in the understanding, and the meditation, whatever you want to talk about, in the description of emptiness, there are two dangers. Okay. Well, one danger is the way that we have existed since beginning of this time is we're eternal. These are technical terms: eternalism, positivism. That is, everything exists. That's how we've been. When we begin to meditate and consider the ideas around reality and emptiness, there's a danger of then falling into nihilism. Oh, I see nothing exists. Okay. So what we talk about is that we talk about what's called the two truths. Okay. Emptiness, in the topic of emptiness, is absolute truth. It is absolute because it is the way things exist. However, there exists not just absolute truth. There also exists what we refer to as conventional truth or relative truth. Okay? So relative truth is yes, there is a lamp over there. Yes, there is a car coming at me. Yes, there is a person, Nathan, Caroline, Denise, and so on. So this is not the danger, but this is what we have to work with. That's why Buddhism is called the middle way. It's the middle way between nihilism and eternalism or positivism or extremism, whatever you want to call it. Okay, it's the middle way between everything exists just like I think it does and nothing exists. So conventional truth is that things are there. There's a clock, there's a table, there's a road, there's a tree, there's a person, there's a daughter, there's a son, there's a husband, there's a wife. Okay? But when we say that, we err to the side of that, but they exist absolutely, but they don't. I mean, they exist that way. The way they appear is how they exist. And that is false, but they exist. Okay? So emptiness is saying things exist, just not inherently the way that we perceive them. Okay, now let's look at that thing one more time about inherent existence.
I want to invite our metaverse crowd right now
Mhm.
to allow discomfort to be part of this moment.
Okay.
Okay. I don't want us to brush over it. I don't want us to go, oh, whatever. I just didn't get it. I give up. Discomfort's here because it's a very vague subject and it's really hard to pin down something that you can just go, got it. So he's trying to bring us around to understanding parts of it until we will get to the point of now I'm starting to understand it. But being uncomfortable right now is extremely expected. So we're
I
in.
don't know. I don't know what people's experiences. Maybe better you ask them because maybe everyone's
Is
realizing
anyone
it.
not uncomfortable about this subject right now?
Well, I just had a question, Karuna,
Yeah,
or more just to kind of clarify. The way you're describing it to me almost is separating the concept of me, Rachel, in this lifetime. That is my ego, my I. But
right.
how I truly exist is this conscious being far expanding this one particular lifetime
That's part of it. That's part of
part of
it.
it.
But
Okay.
yeah, you can have that realization that you're talking about, which we call impermanence, right? That would be kind of to have that point of view of yourself as kind of eternal. The eternal, I don't mean eternally as permanent, but eternally evolving or eternally existing, life after life after life after life. That's still that is considered conventional reality. See, we don't even see conventional reality either. That's part of the problem. Now, the absolute reality or the emptiness of that is that we can, and it happens. This gets very philosophical, and I think it's okay as long as you know it's very philosophical, and this takes ages and years to study. It becomes very interesting. But there are some Buddhist schools that say that impermanent. I'll use the word impermanent, okay, or that moving moment to moment. Impermanence means changing moment to moment. So that Rachel that has been existing since beginning of this time, in our view, changing moment to moment, right? But you and I, we don't see ourselves changing moment to, we see ourselves as fixed and solid, right? Now, the reality, the conventional reality, is we change moment to moment. Some schools of Buddhism, the lower schools, okay, the most basic philosophical say that is the meaning of emptiness. It's not, okay, because even going, even having sorry, even having an appreciation that I'm changing and a realization, by the way, you can perceive this in your meditation where you see that everything's moving.
Hmm.
That is a profound experience. That experience will jumpstart you or propel you into the into the understanding of the emptiness of Rachel. but it is not the understanding of Rachel, because what happens, because of through habit, there's still a subtle woman there. You know what I mean? There's still someone going, oh yeah, I'm experiencing impermanence. I'm impermanent, like that. I mean, that's a bit gross way of saying it, but there's a concept still, I exist permanently,
Okay.
unchanged. But don't worry. I mean, because most of what you're saying is a positive, right? But I'm going really deeper and technical. The lower school, that the higher schools say even that is not emptiness. But you know what? That's a huge kickstart. So when you have that experience of yourself, you need to just push further. That's all I'm saying. You know,
Okay.
yeah, don't get
So
stuck there.
so I understand, like, so Rachel, she was born in 1988, and we'll see how long this body actually lasts, but
Right.
that'll be the end of, we'll call my identity, my name, Rachel. And that'll be the end of it. But what I'm trying to get at is my spirit will continue on. You're saying, um, am I trying to grasp the concept
Yeah.
here that, so that is the impermanence that is still evolving and changing and going to go
Yes.
into another lifetime
Yes.
until I reach enlightenment.
Right. That's
That's
correct.
the end goal.
But
What
it's
what's
not.
what's hap yes. What the what's still happening is, this time Rachel, well, next time, it's George, right?
Hmm.
And George will have the same concept of himself as Rachel has of herself. When I say same concept, I don't mean the details. The same sense, I'm George. That hasn't left yet. That's the thing that keeps us in cyclic existence, as we say.
Hmm.
That's the thing we're trying to eliminate. That concept. Okay, it's a concept, right? It's a concept. Oh, here I am now in my next life. And by the way, as an evolving being, you can have that realization. You will have that realization, but it's not the complete realization yet. The complete realization is when you say, "Oh, and George is still okay." So what makes George and what makes Rachel is okay. Yeah. And ask me again in a few minutes, okay? Because I got to give you more content.
That did help
Yeah.
me
Well, no,
understand.
I'm just saying that would show that,
Yeah.
what were you saying? The reality is false, and what
Yeah.
we're seeing now is not true, because, like you're saying, I'm male, female, who knows, could have been a bug in a past life, an animal in a
Right.
past. So you're seeing all of that, and until until enlightenment then too. So um go
That
ahead.
is that's a profound perception, and that will come as part of it. That's a realization. I'm just being picky. That's still not. That's still
Still not
not.
good enough.
Well, it's not, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's
It's
pretty
not like
good. I just got to be careful that people don't then say, "Oh, I know what emptiness is." It's, when I see
Mm.
my multiple lifetimes, okay, it's still not emptiness. Because in the Hindu tradition, they have realization of that kind of impermanence and past and previous lives, but they don't have the realization of emptiness. So eventually what happens, God, I'm getting so out there. What eventually happens is that meditator, whether it's a Hindu, Buddhist, but we'll talk about Hindus for a moment. That Hindu ascetic will perhaps live in that joyful, blissful state of seeing impermanence it could be for eons,
Hmm.
but because they still have the basic ignorance, basic misunderstanding of the self, that meditator still thinks I'm meditating. I'm seeing this impermanence.
Mm.
I'm in the God realms. That I is still there, you see. That I is false. And until he or she sees the falseness of that I and what is the proper I, because there is a proper I, then they enter the path of full awakening. They won't fall back. But
Okay.
if they don't do that, you fall back. And we say because there's been unlimited lifetimes, all of us have been that meditator before, and we've been in the God realms. We call God realms. We're in a meditative state for zillions of years, but here we are. What's a trillion years in endless time? It doesn't, it's right. It's kind of irrelevant, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
That's,
they can just reach the astral realms and
yeah.
okay,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
sit there for again eons if they wanted to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you can go the other way too, like down, you know, bad.
I
Yeah.
feel like that does kind of like run alongside one of my questions that I was asking or going to ask, which is like with these realizations, like, okay, is the point to then like kind of come back to the self and apply that or
Yes.
be the emptiness? And I
Yes.
think kind of what you just, said there is that there is an ability to come back to the self um, while it's still being there, but that is not the true emptiness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, uh, so when we realize the emptiness of the false self, right? It's not the elimination of all this of you, because that would be nihilism. Who would want that? Oh, I'm meditating so I can cease to exist. And by the way, the lower Buddhist schools do have that concept. In the Hinayana tradition, they do have that concept. Uh, it's not actually, it's not accurate. Who would want that? You know? So what it means is eliminating the false self. But when we eliminate the false self, you won't cease to exist. Don't worry. That would be terrible. I mean, who wants that? I'd rather exist as a whatever, human being and in living in Santa Cruz. So ceasing to exist doesn't sound very fun. So Nathan and everyone else, there will never not be an experiencer. What we're talking about is eliminating the false concept of the experiencer. When we eliminate the false concept of the experiencer, the true the true experiencer awakens. Thank God.
Okay, that cleared it up big
That
time.
was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I had put that slide about nihilism and positivism. The eliminating the self, all sense of self completely is nihilism. So let me tell you what, and okay, so I think this is
Wait
useful
a minute.
because
Nathan, are you with Sandro?
Not anymore, no.
Okay. I think that
so
would help Sandro a lot.
um um
Never not eliminating the experience.
oh so this is important. Okay. This is not on our topic, but it's essential, okay? Because of the trend of our conversation right now. The what happens with enlightenment? Okay. So we are mental and physical beings. The body is not what attains enlightenment, so don't worry about, well, technically it's not. What attains enlightenment is the mind. The mind attains enlightenment through the realization and meditation on reality or emptiness. So there is someone meditating on emptiness. And when you meditate on the emptiness of the self, you don't cease to exist. If someone's meditating on it, this is really important. It's so simple, actually. It's so simple. So I'm meditating on emptiness, and then I have realization of the emptiness of the self. Doesn't it imply there's someone experiencing it? Or does everything just go poof? In the Hinayana tradition, that's what they say. It's not accurate. What does go poof is the wrong concept of me, my concept of me, whatever it is at that point. And that concept of ourself, actually, this concept, like I might say, so let's say that Denise comes in one day when she was my client. I hope that's not, I didn't break
No,
confidentiality, did I?
fine.
Okay. She comes in as my client and she says, well, I figured out you're full of shit. What you've been telling me is, and then I go, right? Right? I grab something here. And then Carrie says, no, Karuna, you got it right. And then I go, wow, I'm pretty good. That guy, that person, when she comes in upset at me, and I say, oh, I don't know, I guess she didn't understand me, or I'm not a good therapist, right? That I is the one that's false. Okay, that I is appearing. Let me share again. I see, I got so many PowerPoint. I gotta see if this is the one. Yeah, that I is why do I see myself that way? If that's false, I'm sorry. Just see, I got so many slides and they're all so good. Are you seeing phenomena? Is that what you're seeing? What are you seeing right now on the screen?
Two
The two
objects.
objects of emptiness.
Okay, it's the wrong. I got the wrong slide up. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. The problem is like my screen's partly covered by the Zoom. And it says phenomena, and it's we already just discussed that. So phenomena, when we see a phenomena, let's take your lamp, you are perceiving it as inherently existing. That is what we're talking about as a self, an entity. You know, the lamp still is appearing to you. So the selflessness of me is the emptiness of the way I conceive my identity, psychologist or whatever. And now the emptiness, also the lamp has a self. Now I'm not talking about it's not a conscious thing. It's when you look at sorry, when we look at the lamp, we don't see the lamp. It's really important. We impute, excuse me, we impute on the lamp. You and I don't actually see the lamp. Did you know that? But no, you didn't know that because we always think we're seeing the lamp. When you uh, you know, when you're in the supermarket and you're reaching for the milk, you and I, when I say you, it means me too, okay? You see the milk and you believe the milk, what you're seeing. But did you know you're not seeing the milk at all? Or the milk carton? You're not seeing the real milk carton. What are you seeing? Anyone want to guess?
Is this what you were going into last week about the light turning on? And Denise is like, oh, you just flick the light switch on, but are you seeing the guys who installed the electrical lines
In
and
this
that's
case,
part of it?
well, this is part of it, but not yes and no.
So are we seeing the milk carton and the cow and all
Not
of it?
so if we see it correctly, we're seeing all that. Okay. But what is it we do see?
I just
So
see
there's a
milk.
milk carton. There's a milk carton. There's a bicycle. There's a lamp. There's a cupboard. There's a Carrie. There's a Denise. You know, when I'm seeing them, I'm not talking about the self, but when I see Denise and I see you, Rachel, and everybody else, this is so important. This is psychology of it, I always say this is so important. I guess everything's important. But anyway, the what we see, this is Nathan, are you listening?
I am, yeah.
Okay. When you and I see anything, each instant nanosecond, whether it's hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, what did I say? Seeing, hearing, all those things, those five cameras, as well as my mental camera. Because I think when I close my eyes and I think of my childhood home or when you're dreaming, all of that, everything, we do not experience the thing directly. And we think we do. What we experience is every time I look at anything, so that's all the time, but let's just take my watch here, you know. When I look at the watch, what am I actually experiencing? Anyone want to venture a guess?
Is this the everything's dependent?
Well, it is. That's right. So but before you go to that, what is it? When I see my watch or when I see you, anything, I'll just tell you. So when we perceive something, um, again, I have to apologize. You're going to forgive me for this, right? I know you are because you're nice people. It's a slide that I often have used with you guys. There. Okay. So the mind, right, consciousness is seeing the lamp. And that's the dependency, Nathan, is that I cannot see the lamp without a lamp, right? I cannot see the lamp without an eye organ, right? And I cannot see the lamp without a mind,
Mm.
correct? Now, when the lamp and the eye organ come in contact, it flashes onto my mind. I am never experiencing the lamp. I'm always experiencing a imputation of a mental image of the lamp. Think about it. What is the lamp in my mind other than a mental image? But I say, oh, that's the lamp. But it's not, because what's imputed on my consciousness and experience is something that's, remember the three things. It's something that's permanent. Okay, now I got to go to my other side. Bad teacher.
Have you heard of the quantum field then, Karuna? Have you?
I have, but I need more instruction on it.
Well, I'm just going into the whole mental image of the lamp. So, right, we create our own reality. If we were to sit and meditate and what I believe is our reality is prior to that is us creating that in our quantum field. So,
Yes.
before it's projected out into the world, we've thought about it, we've thunk this idea, and poof, there it comes, whether it's, turkey sandwich or it's a brand new house, right? We've thought about that prior to it actually existing out in the world. I don't know if that kind of goes along with your mental image of the lamp and how it exists. It's all created with the mind.
Yes. I mean, I could comment on details of that, but for the moment, that's fine. Yeah, that's where I'm going. But let's add some window dressing to it, right? So the first thing about the lamp is it appears to exist from its own side. Okay. Now, if I'm really experiencing the lamp as a mental image, okay, so when I don't see it that way, I see it as existing from its own side. Okay, that means I see everything, including my sense of self, as existing independently. So listen carefully, Nathan, because what is the opposite of independently?
Independent.
Correct. But I see it as independent. So I don't see it. So it is a dependent. Everything, at least, and it's much more, at least the experience of the lamp is dependent on a lamp, my eye organ, and a mental image. But I don't experience that way. The Buddha experiences this way, how things really are. Okay.
This
So
is
everything that we go through, it seems to exist out there. But I'm experiencing the lamp in my mind. I'm not actually experience itself is not out there. But what's my belief? Out there. Okay, if you paint the house, a softer, pale shade of white, it'll look better. But the shade of white is a mental image too. And the person that Denise is talking to says, well, that is a shade of white. That's a paler shade. Which is it? If it existed independently, okay, this is again, you need to think about this stuff. If something existed independently, we would all see it the same way. If something existed inherently, it would it would always exist that way, and everyone would experience it that way because that's the way it is. Okay, that's the way it is. So if Denise existed inherently, everyone would see her as a jovial, friendly, lovely person. Carrie, picking on Carrie. And Denise, if Carrie, was existed independently, and when you're upset with him and you're talking about him grumpy or whatever, if he that was the way he existed, which is the way you see him, right? Independently grumpy, right? Then we'd all have to, then that's who he is. So something that exists inherently means it exists the way it appears. Nothing exists the way it appears to us. Nothing.
Okay, so I just wrote down a question.
Okay, let me hang on to it because I'll
Yeah.
just to synthesize. The way that things don't exist the way they appear is three things I've spoken about. One is they appear to us as independently and they do not exist independently. The other thing is I said this last week, they appear to exist monolithically without parts. They don't. Everything has parts, almost everything. And the third is everything exists permanently without change, whereas every phenomenon is in the nature of change except for a few particular, like space. But so those three things is how they appear to us independently, not dependently. They appear independently when in fact they are existing dependently. They appear to us as monolithic, like that lamp, but that lamp is nothing but parts. You can't find the lamp if it's all parts. There's not one single entity of a lamp if you have, countless, well, not countless, many parts to it. But we don't see it as parts. We see it as monolithic. And the third is that, what was my third one? Permanently, meaning it's not changing moment to moment. Definition of impermanence is that which changes moment to moment. Definition of permanence is that which does not change moment to moment. Now, for something to exist impermanently means it exists with cause and effect, right? It's arising and coming into a fruition, and then it falls away. That lamp is in the nature of impermanence, which means it's in the nature of cause and effect, endless causes and effects. I mean, we might say, oh, the cause was the manufacturer, but if that lamp is in if that lamp is moving instant to instant, which it is, that means it's an endless arising and falling of causes and effects. Okay, Nathan, go ahead.
I'm pretty like this question is pretty like I don't know how to feel about it yet.
Okay.
So if we do come to some realizations, right?
Yes, we will. Yeah,
Right.
when we
So,
do.
so I guess I'm kind of trying to push against this. So
Sure.
if we do see true reality,
Right.
there is still an observer.
Yes.
And if there is still an observer,
Hmm.
then how can you ever truly see the thing? Because you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Basically, I feel like this leads into kind of proving like the two slit theory.
The two what?
The two slit theory. I don't know if you know that.
No, I don't.
It's basically it's like very famous. It's Schrodinger's cat or something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, basically saying like existence isn't a thing without a like conscious being seeing it. I don't know if that's like too far, but basically,
No.
I do think the question at the start is a good one, which is like, okay, if there is still an observer, then how can you actually truly see the thing for what it is? Because there still is an observer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, why can't you?
Well, you're saying now, well, I guess maybe because the observer is the true observer.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah, then
Um, okay, so to to say otherwise is to say the thing doesn't exist at all, right?
uh-huh.
Whereas that, remember our definition, or no, my explanation, there's two truths, conventional and absolute. And when we only believe in absolute truth, then we become nihilists. Nothing exists. When we only believe in conventional truth, we become positivists. So that's why there's two truths, and they work in tandem, right?
Mhm.
So there to have an observer, to have an experiencer, doesn't mean that something doesn't exist, does it? But
Or does it?
well, what it actually goes to the most subtle uh, description of how things exist, which is they exist dependently. They're okay. This is where I mean, how are we out of time yet? It's okay.
11 minutes for tonight. We can carry on.
Okay, no, 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 I can't.
I'm saying on another night.
Oh,
If you guys feel like this is touching something that you want to know more about, let me know, you guys, so we can try to go, wait, let's clarify that more.
okay. So the way everything exists, so this is reality, okay? When we realize emptiness, what we're realizing, I think this will help, Nathan. When we realize emptiness, we're not realizing a void. We're not realizing like space.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Okay. What we are realizing is we then have a direct perception that everything exists dependently. See that word dependent origination? Is that up? Do we have the right slide?
Yeah.
Okay. See that dependent origination?
Yeah.
That's the flip side of the coin of emptiness. This is good that we're getting to this before we finish. The flip side of emptiness, what goes with emptiness, is dependent origination. When someone realizes emptiness, they realize, well, technically they don't, but just forget that. When they realize emptiness, they realize dependent origination. Okay? They see that everything exists dependently. And this is going to get really profound. Okay. This goes back to what you were talking about, Nathan. What are things dependent on? If they're dependent, they appear independent. And this is where you take this away. Nathan asked us in the beginning. What you do now when this class is finished and what you do for the next 50 years is you meditate and observe and analyze how you see things existing independently. What does that mean independently? We see things as causeless. That's similar to impermanence. We see things as partless, but they're not. They're dependent on components, parts, conditions. And this is the most profound one. Only the highest school of Buddhism says, and they're dependent on a mind that labels them. If there is no mind perceiving it, it does not exist. Wow. That means that planet, that star, way out in the universe somewhere, theoretically, hypothetically, if nothing's perceiving that star, it does not exist. Wow. Even my wife argues that one with me, by the way. So don't get but that's amazing. For example, space. Space, like space, not outer space, space. Space is permanent. It does not change moment to moment. So, therefore, is it independent? It exists the way it appears? No. Does it because it has component space. This is what's funny. We don't think of it like this, but the components that space has is the four directions. Like between me and my laptop, there's space. That space is permanent, not changing moment to moment. Of course, there's atoms there, molecules. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking the space between the molecules, between the atoms. If there's no space, you couldn't move. The atoms couldn't move. They'd be permanent. So the component of space is the container that it's in. Okay. North, south, they did say talk about north, south, east, west. Don't worry too technically about it. And something you've probably never thought about, so it's going to kind of twist your mind around anyway. But now, so if space does not have a cause, okay, well, it does have components, but it exists things if they're not every experience, every experience that we have, the mind is labeling it or imputing it. Just like the lamp, that's action imputation. Okay, there is a lamp there, but that lamp cannot exist without me imputing lamp. And it's not that gross. It's more subtle than saying lamp. The mind's imputing, it does label lamp, but it happens instantaneously. So if something is not labeling it or cognizing it, it doesn't exist.
I think this is really interesting because I'm really, really, really thinking about the two slit theory here. And
Uh-huh.
it basically this is so you have like a slit of paper. There's two slits in the paper, and you shoot atoms through the paper.
Right.
And basically, if it's observed, the atoms come out in the line of the slits. And if it's not observed, the atoms come out on the other side completely random. And that's like something that we can physically, scientifically prove that happens. And so,
Right.
like scientifically proving that basically consciousness is the thing cultivating reality, basically.
Correct. I remember this. That's correct.
Yeah,
That is correct.
very cool.
Yeah.
That's cool, Nathan.
Yeah. That goes back to what was there was some theory well, is that the same thing as how the observer impacts the results of experiment
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I am familiar with that. I'm a little bit familiar with it. Yeah, that's correct. Correct. And it's the labeling of it too, not just the observation. It's the observation. There's no observation without labeling. That's what's interesting. And now I say labeling, it's a very subtle phenomenon, very subtle dynamic labeling. It doesn't mean like, I label Denise as a nice person, I label Denise as blonde hair. That is labeling, but this is something that happens in every instant. There's a label, which is another way of thinking. The labeling is mentally imputing. But when we impute, we do give a name. Okay, very subtle, gross and subtle.
I want to offer this to our metaverse. When we see that between us and everything that we experience, there's a story, there's a something that we impute onto it, and then we practice saying, what if I didn't need to sum up the reason that person dresses that way immediately when I see that person? What if
That
I didn't need to analyze that car and who owns that car based on what the car looks like? What if I didn't need to, and you start noticing your stories and asking, what is the usefulness of all these stories? They're like causing my mind to just have so much in it. And one by one, it's like you start to let go of a story. There's a car there, and it doesn't need to have anything else. There's a leaf there, and it doesn't need to have anything else. My experience has been like this spaciousness that you start to realize that you're like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't need to have all these things about everything in my head anymore. I can just see the tree. It's a tree, you know?
so just to push a little further. So that is our practice, right? That is our practice. And to see that all those descriptions are merely labels, right? And they're merely labeled upon our past experiences.
Right.
So, like with trauma or whatever, any experience. Like I really like electric cars, you know. So that's based upon experience, and that I label electric car as good because of what you're talking about, right? This endless plethora of experience. But just I want to make very clear, that's a gross level of labeling. It's not the level of labeling I'm talking about. I'm talking about raw, at the raw, bare experience of something. We also label then. But that grows into I don't like electric cars and I do like electric cars. Okay. And all that stuff that you're talking about. So that is the reason you or I would practice how you're describing it is because on the deeper level, I understand everything is mere description, even in a nanosecond. This is what's so important about emptiness. I want you to take this away because it's 7:29. This is happening on the nanosecond level. Okay? And less or quicker. I am only seeing all you guys right now based upon my imputation. But there's no other way to, well, you can experience it barely without imputation, of course. But when I experience everybody here without that kind, it's not that the Buddha doesn't impute. It's almost like it's imputed with a complete openness of understanding and experiencing the imputation as well, observing the imputations, even at the infinitesimal level. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine that level of awareness?
Mhm.
I mean, that level of awareness is enlightenment. You know, think how it would be for us. And as we started, it's not instant enlightenment. This thing that we're talking about is developed gradually. You know, you get better and better at it, and subtle, more subtle and more subtle and more subtle. And at the level that Denise is talking about, that I don't want to say it's gross, like a value judgment, but that's, you know, that's much more subtle than normal people, right? But we're talking about an enlightened mind or the awakening mind. You start seeing it in the moment to moment.
Well, see, that's what I think is the fun part you were saying enlightenment happens step by step is
Yeah.
because when we start letting go of what I will call the pollution between me and an object,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
maybe tomorrow I have half of the pollution between me and an object, and maybe I have 1/10 later on between me and an object. In that space that's now there, I have the capability to see other things in a different way that I never saw before.
The direct result of that is happiness.
Yes.
That's why it's called samsara as a prison. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's good. See you later.
My hand's in the air. It doesn't belong in the air. But I would,
Mhm.
Karuna, if you have a couple minutes, we had last week a really nice discussion just of give me a main takeaway. Like I loved Dominique's takeaway. Like if things can be seen from all these different angles, then I can just choose which channel is the most beneficial angle.
Mhm.
It was so good, right?
That's spiritual practice.
Right.
That's the path.
So would you mind if I had us do, we only have a few of us here, a quick, here's my takeaway as of this part and what I'm going to go continue to contemplate.
Sure.
Rach, you want to go first?
Oh, I see. Everyone does that. Okay. What if doesn't someone doesn't have one?
They don't have to. They know they can pass.
No, this honestly, when I start contemplating this, it just brings up more questions. So for
Sure.
me, it's
Good.
jumping into what free will that entails and what
Mhm.
karma, I've got to work through as well. So I would just rather just give gratitude. So thank you, Karuna, for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
really
Yeah.
appreciate your wealth of knowledge.
Thank
So
you.
thank you very much.
Hope it's helpful. It's so the value is trying to be explained so people can understand them, right? Remember what I
Well,
told
it's
you?
hard when you have such a complex subject and you've got to
Yeah.
simplify it. So that
Yeah.
takes a lot of brains there. Thank you.
You know what Einstein said, right? If you can't
Mm.
explain a complex subject simply, you don't understand it well enough.
Mm.
Dominique?
Yeah, she puts you on the spot, doesn't she?
Um, I don't know. Where did I get to from last week? I guess I'm still maybe you just had me, in your first 2 minutes, and I'm still thinking about that intention,
Oh yeah.
right? That the intention, with which because then if I think about my comment from last week, and I think that was inspired by you gave the example of Trump, which I've still been thinking. It's like, oh, so does that mean that if I see Trump on television, I can just, I
Yeah.
don't know, like be blissful looking at
Yeah.
Trump. I mean,
You
you
that's,
could, right?
yes.
But then if I pair that with the intention, I go like, if the intention of that is to be happy in this life, that's not really spiritual practice then,
It's
right?
not
Like
spirit it's not
right.
spiritual practice, but it's positive.
It's positive.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that intention, yeah, anyway, I think that was my takeaway, that to take that now one step further, right? Not just to be blissful when I'm looking at Trump, but also to take that into spiritual practice. I have to take my
Yeah.
intention towards, I guess, awakening and
Yeah.
beyond this lifetime and so forth. I think
I- the,
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
meditate on.
the thing with intention is it's directly related to what we mean by karma. So it leaves imprints on the karma is simply said is the imprints we leave on our consciousness. So everything we do leaves an imprint or a seed, and every seed ripens into something. So if you want to have a blissful life, then you see Trump in a way that with an imprint that leads to a blissful experience. That's all.
That's all.
Anyone else? Okay.
Caroline?
I think the one phrase that hit me the most tonight is that everything is dependent.
Correct. Good. Yeah.
That's where I was like, okay, that's where the light bulb went on inside the
Good.
lamp.
And 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 the juxtaposition of that is we see everything as independent. So if you can meditate or not don't meditate, just think as you walk around, oh, I now see what he means by I see it as independent. That would be a great, huge, and then knowing that it still exists, but dependently. Doesn't mean that the pillow stops existing because you see it independently, and it's not. It still exists, but how?
Yeah.
Dependently. Yeah. Okay, can I go now?
No, two more. Carrie?
Just always amazed, Karuna. Your knowledge is so vast, and I think for me, it's really the countless eons I have to develop my mind stronger and look for that blissful life.
Thank you, Carrie. It's in the Tibetan Buddhist path, in the Buddhist path, there's also what's known as the Vajrayana path, a Vajrayana path, which is sometimes referred as the lightning path. And they talk about how it is even possible to attain enlightenment in one lifetime. And we hear about Shakyamuni Buddha attained enlightenment, took him three countless great eons, which I measured, I can't remember the number now, but it's trillions and trillions of years. And I was at his teachings with the Holy Dalai Lama many, many years ago, and he was teaching on the awakening mind of compassion. And someone asked the question, what's the quickest way to enlightenment? And His Holiness showed the aspect of being irritated by the question, which is a very common question. I mean, it's one of our main goals. I need to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings as quickly as possible, right? But His Holiness showed this aspect of kind of being irritated. And he said, you Westerners always want the quick fix. You always want it fast. He said, but myself, I'm becoming quite comfortable with taking my time, even if it's 3 eons.
Right.
Wow. Because it's compassion, by the way. He was saying from compassion, he wants to just never stop working for living beings. So anyway, and I think Nathan's our last one, right?
Ethan?
Yeah, I think these topics are, I feel like it's really just about kind of going back over the topics and then thinking about it You just
Mhm.
like literally just kind of philosophizing to yourself. Um, and then yeah, I can definitely see how, the more and more you think about it, the more and more you kind of feel it as true.
Mhm.
And so, that's how I can see it being applied to like, okay, if I'm actually, irritated in a situation, you know, it's almost like you can remember that immediately. But I think the ultimate goal is to just never originally feel the annoyance, but that'll come.
That'll come. There's two books. One's I like it as a kind of a manual, a really beautiful little book called How to See Yourself as You Really Are by His Holiness Dalai Lama. How to See Yourself as You Really Are. And then and by the way, there's I mean, most of the book, not most, there's so many texts written on emptiness. It was what we call the Prajnaparamita text. So Buddha, 1/3 of all the Buddha's teachings were on this topic. 1/3. And I think there's something like 300 volumes. So 100 volumes are just written on this topic of the nature of reality or emptiness. Okay. So, but this book called Insight into Emptiness. Oh yeah, that's two. I think that's two. Well, that one's good. Meditate. That's like my Bible, or was for a long time, by Jeffrey Hopkins. But a little shorter verse thing is also this one, Insight into Emptiness by
And Zur Jumpy Tedcock.
yeah, Tech Choke, Geshe Jampa Tech Choke, who was a resident teacher here in Santa Cruz for many years. Very, very, very learned. He passed away some years ago. Um, so that's a little bit more detailed, but it's everything and it's accurate. And the one that Denise has also, that's an unbelievable. So that's a bit thicker. It's about you can choose what you want. And then I would just start off with His Holiness is how to see yourself as you really are. Yes, it's very palpable. In fact, Denise, how you see yourself as you really are was written with Jeffrey Hopkins, who wrote Meditation on Emptiness.
Awesome. I have one more practical question, please. When you're saying we see things as causeless,
Yes.
in order to contemplate and meditate on that, do we ask, what was the cause of me seeing this way?
Yeah. Well, you can even be simpler. When you're meditating, what you can do is a lot of things you can do. If you're distracted, all that, that also has cause. What's the cause of the distraction? And you can look at it serially, right? Like in one way, the cause of a mental experience, like let's say distraction or upsetness, is is the previous moment because it's impermanent, it's serial. Now, if I'm sitting here and then all of a sudden I'm getting upset with Denise, right? It just pops in my mind. Yes, the previous moment caused that moment, but there's more than that. It's also the fact that when I saw Denise last, she promised me she'd buy me my coffee and she didn't, and I was pissed off. Okay? Yeah. It's gonna be some mental imprint is the cause. Okay? Or every time I see red, I get nauseous. What's the cause of that? I don't know. When I was a kid, whatever, right? So causes are the mental imprints, not the thing. The cause of my nausea because when I was I remember when I had an ear surgery, I could only drink buttermilk. So I hate buttermilk. It's so scary. So my point is the buttermilk is not the cause of me disliking buttermilk. It's my mental imprints of when I drank buttermilk. I didn't like it. So this would be very, very careful. So the cause, condition and causes. Conditions are not causes. The condition is buttermilk. The cause is my mental imprints around the experience. Okay? Conditions, causes, conditions, causes. We always call conditions, we always call conditions causes, by the way. The cause of my cold is that my wife had it and we sleep in the same bed and she was breathing all over. Isn't that how we do it? That's the cause of my cold. That's not the cause of the cold. That's the conditions for getting a cold. right? Because maybe someone else is around her and they didn't get the cold. Why? Same conditions. Okay.
Mm.
They don't have the causes. Okay, good night.
I want to wrap us up formally by offering out an forgiveness if we confused you by bringing this subject up in a time that you were like, wait a minute, that was not the intention. And so please, we ask for forgiveness. If there's something that you brought up tonight that you just feel like I shouldn't have said that, oh darn it, no, please forgive your own self and offer that to your own self.
Yeah.
I'd also like to bring up that we navigated a difficult subject with a nice captain and a fantastic captain navigating us. Thank you so much. And we can still be left with confusion. We
You
stuck
will.
through it.
Mm.
We didn't go run and grab a line of cocaine. We
No.
like stayed here with it.
You don't know about this other 6 people though that aren't here.
And we stayed. we didn't avoid it.
They might be doing
Didn't
lines of
numb it.
cocaine.
We stayed with it, and we stayed with it together in a group, which is really important in human connection. In doing that, we create a lot of positive merit,
Mm.
okay, which can help us in our previous karmas that might not have been so positive, to give those potential to be purified. But we're not selfish. We are generous. Generosity breeds abundance. So we're going to take the merit that we earned tonight immediately, and we're going to give it out to other people who are suffering more than we are.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Good night. See you soon.
May all wars end immediately. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.